Welcome back. Ding, 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 ding. The gloves are off. We're in round 5. This round is going to be where hopefully, the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses get to tell their story a bit. But before we start on that, I wanted to go back to yesterday, day 4, and on the stand, an expert on human rights was put on the stand. I'm going to actually pull that information up here. Yes, it's right here. Right there. Now, in the afternoon, an expert on human rights, Professor, this Hade Stroman, Lyle, not sure how to say his name, but he came to the stand. Anyways, the article from the local news linked below, and it's explained that Lyle said if the Ministry of Children and Family Affairs and state administrator conclude that Jehovah's Witness organization does engage in negative social control, they should be reporting to Child Protective Services. And he argued extensively that the states are not free to interpret the content of the convention as they wish. Now remember, this convention is part of this European convention and kind of how they rule on things. Now, he went on to say, if something is to be in violation, it must be so in all states party to the convention. And while what he was saying isn't in full agreement with the organization being in violation, he is highlighting the need for all states to conclude them to be in violation. So what this could do is open this up further to all this other states having to investigate this particular aspect. They'll iron it out in Norway here, of course, but this is going to prompt all the other European states to look at this. And if they come into an agreement, then in all these states, Jehovah's Witnesses could lose their charity status just from all of this. Okay, well, that's a little bit on yesterday. Today we're going to get right into it here. Okay, well, grab your coffee and buckle up because we're going to venture into day 5, January 12th, 2024. So there's a look at what's inside the courtroom. That's what it looks like, a picture from that angle. Doesn't look like there's a lot of people in there, but there's enough to do what's necessary. And this is another picture from the courtroom. Everyone's in there casually dressed. I thought maybe you'd have to dress up, but you don't to go into a courtroom. It's not like a kingdom hall. First up is Kåre, Sæter, a high-ranking JW, finishes his testimony from yesterday. And in his testimony, he talks about JW's social practices, emphasizing 2 weekly meetings focused on preaching and discussing faith. Private interactions play a key role, but socializing with the Kingdom Hall is minimal, lacking coffee, events, and meals. He talks about rituals, particularly weddings, highlighted an open ceremony where anyone is welcome, but an excluded person cannot participate as a witness or bridesmaid. And this emphasizes the community's strong stance on maintaining spiritual unity. Financial transparency was addressed. He talks about the organization's reliance on voluntary contributions. Witnesses detailed their global efforts, contributing to relief in countries less fortunate, and clarifies that the funds raised in Norway are not sent to the USA. Now, he's talking about financial transparency. Jehovah's Witnesses in Canada are not financially transparent. So maybe they're a little different, or maybe they have to show themselves as different in Norway. I'm not sure. But as far as I know, this organization is not transparent at all. Yeah, so as far as transparency, maybe they're doing something different there in Norway. Now we carry on. The Elders' book, Shepherd of the Flock, is considered a religious text, was explored. He says it offers guidance, but isn't a rule book. Really. It's a rule book. Elders who are lay people consider various factors in decision-making, including an individual's conscience. The book also addresses social dynamic post-excommunication. We covered the Elder's book, just you guys as the audience. I have a lot of videos just covering that Elder's book, showing you what's in it. He clarifies their practice of shunning, explaining that it is a biblical directive, and they avoid those who leave the faith, but highlighted the personal choices individuals make in implementing this guidance. There is no one-size-fits-all rule. When asked about the treatment of unbaptized members, he said that different situations warrant unique responses, and the emphasis was on individual conscience and varied circumstances that play a role in making decisions. Yeah. It's not individual conscience. Anyways, witnesses provided details on their financial model, emphasizing their reliance on voluntary contributions. Says the organization operates without a fixed budget, and contributions are received as gifts, and the financial transparency extends to their efforts in the global humanitarian aid. They should really define that global humanitarian aid, because they don't go out and feed the poor or the hungry at will. If there's a disaster, they go in and fix their kingdom halls. That's it. They might buy a bottle of water for some neighbors, and they might help a few neighbors with some other houses, fix them up. Usually they get the insurance money. Now, he talked about the role of the governing body, the highest authority among Jehovah's Witnesses, responsible for global guidance, and he emphasized the importance of local variation, stressing that the core principles are universal, but practice may differ. Yeah, he didn't talk about them honestly, the role of the governing body. They're worshipped. Yeah, the highest authority. They're worshipped. They're responsible for global guidance. They're worshipped. He emphasizes the importance of local variation. They're worshipped all over the world, the governing body. Anyways, he's talked about their approach to literature, stating that they distribute it for free globally. No, they don't. They asked every congregation to give $11 in the U.S. per person. So, they're asking for money. They're asking the annual meeting. They went on and on about tithing, 10% and giving more than 10%. We'll continue. Some additional notes from the same testimony with more detail. Okay, I'll keep my comments out. I'll try to. Some additional notes from the same testimony with more detail. Going over Children's Convention, UNCRC, parents have the rights to guide their own children when it comes to faith. A child's right to participation after the age of 12, the child has more rights to independent options. States that there is nothing in the Norwegian law that says exclusion is illegal. Talks about 2 unwavering meetings. Talks about social interaction. There is no coffee or food after the meeting. The meetings are purely religious. Outside the meetings, it's voluntary and individual choice of what people do. Marriage is sacred, the second most important relationship in Jehovah's Witness life, marriage. It is important for the congregation and Jehovah's Witness to be able to get married. Talks about weddings and marriage vows. This is an open ceremony. The married couple decides who takes part. Everything is done on a voluntary basis. Everything is given. People give what they want. It is not a tithe. Talks about the translation department. Everything voluntary. It is a significant part of expenses. Matthew 10:10. If a brother and sister are in a financial need, others help them. Norwegian Jehovah's Witnesses want to help brothers and sisters abroad and send money. Expenses to produce material occur abroad, so they send money abroad. You see, they send money to the governing body to New York. That's where the money goes. And a lot of the money is used on, like this, legal things all over the world. They're using this money to cover legal problems. Talks about the relationship between Norway, Germany, and the USA. Revenues are recorded as gifts from individual members, but why aren't they transparent? Why don't they show that? Talks about state contributions and other revenues. Talks about how long Kåre has worked for the Jehovah's Witnesses, 6 years in Denmark, before that in Norway. Before that, he was a pioneer elder in Norway. He was married. She is dead. They have no children. They have 2 meetings a week, plus 1 big meeting a year. You get baptized at a big meeting, explains the governing body, talks from the Bible about the model, a leading group of 9 mature elders who are members, how to contact the governing body. Once a month, there is a video from the governing body, as well as spiritual food in the form of literature that is translated in the same worldwide. The principles are the same worldwide. Teaching is common. Talks about publication, study edition, official edition. Circuit Overseer. The Elder Book is from the governing body. Yes, the cult members that control the organization. We know that. Talks about shunning. Didn't catch exactly what they said. One should not eat with such people. Talks about whether Watchtower or other literature states what members should do. A lot of gaslighting. Absolutely. There are no rules. BS. There's so many rules. The Watchtower is not a rule book. It is. It varies between individuals, no clear rules. There's lots of rules in that Elder's Book. Okay. Talks about Jordan Peterson. A letter from him from March 4, 2023. Why did they talk about Jordan Peterson? Jordan Peterson? Anyways, the governing body is not involved in letter writing, explains the letter. Oh, get out of here. We just seen them asking for letters for Japan. Anyways, it is true what is stated in the letter, but it is basically on biblical principles. Do Jehovah's Witnesses have practical rules? Says no, but biblical principles. Talks about sources from the bitter winter, their buddies. Talks about the Watchtower directions, continues to talk about biblical principles and realities. Says they have a new book instead of the Elder's Handbook. Really? They have a new book? I heard they're coming up with a new book. Maybe they're taking our advice and they're going to throw that Elder's Book in the garbage. Okay. Says they got a new book. Okay, asks about it. Fundamentally, it's like that. It's a bit difficult to take notes here. That's what person saying that's taking these notes. Okay, asks about a report from Australia, says he doesn't remember it. Typical age for unbaptized preacher can be 10 years old. You must be married for sexual privileges. It is more of a sexual intercourse. Masturbation is sexual intercourse, ? Shameful behavior, unnecessary association, says the Elder's Handbook is a religious text, not a rule book. Lost track. It's a rule book. Okay, one can be deprived of being an elder. It depends on the person's conscience. Being an elder is a privilege. There are other privileges. Okay, talks too fast. Asks about different relationships between Jehovah's Witnesses versus ex-Jehovah's Witnesses versus worldly people. He reads from the Bible. Talks about movements before and after Jehovah's Witnesses lost the right to movements. Link to the news item with translation on Kåre's testimony. And there's a link to it right there. Navartland. So I think it's right here too. So here it is. Board members about cutting contact up to individual family. That's how the newspaper's presenting this. So the newspaper says, Court, Kåre Sæter, board member for Jehovah's Witnesses, explained himself to the court on Thursday and Friday. And here he claimed that the religious community has no rules for contact with expelled family members, completely contrary to the state's claim. Ah, yeah, he did. So here's the board member, Kåre Sæter, in the back of the picture, explained himself on Thursday, Friday. So Kåre would be in the back of the picture. So this guy here is Kåre. Here, let's zoom in on him. Right there. Does he look honest? They say you can tell by their face. Okay. This is Okay, next in the ring is Rolf Feruli. He testifies. Now, remember, Rolf is this fella right here. I'll take myself off the screen here. And Rolf, he's the one that pretty much got this all going. He's the grandfather of all this stuff. So we did read his 20 points, I think, a couple of days ago. And there is a link to what he's saying there. So we're going to take a look at what he says in court here. And we'll get back into the article. So here they are. He went 30 minutes overtime. He says he loved being a JW and that if he lived his life again, he would do the same all over again. That's what Ralph says. He says that lots of people that get disfellowshipped now never should have been according to the Bible. And he's right. He tried to object internally first and ended up writing his book. He was then disfellowshipped. Interesting. He got disfellowshipped. I got demonized for writing a book. The state asked him about shunning, asked if the circuit overseers talk about shunning. The state asked him about that. And he confirmed that the CO, that as a circuit overseer, they enforced the congregations to follow the procedures. And he says the Shepherding the Flock of God book is a rule book on how congregations and elders behave. And he's right. And he says it's an important book that has to be followed. They follow that, like, seriously, they follow that thing like it's the Bible. They will put the elders' book over the Bible. Yeah. It's just, we have so many stories. It says the Watchtower is the main publication, talks about the Bible study and the purpose of the articles. Yes, Jehovah equals Watchtower. Talks about the book, Keep Yourself in God's Love. He says the literature is being dumbed down. Now it's so simple. Previously, JWs were trained in the Bible study, deep study. And he talks about the governing body and how the power got moved from the governing body of elders up to the GB today, the idols, the 9 men in New York. How freedom was lost, and now it's micromanaged. And he refers to the 1976 when it became this way. Now the GB has unlimited power, how they say they are chosen by God to interpret the Bible for all members. And members have to accept whatever the GB says, give examples, talks about how his friends now shun him. And he sent his book to his longtime friends. None of them even downloaded the book when he sent it to them. And they refused to even read it because the governing body said so. And that's what happened in my case. And they wouldn't even read his arguments. And he says the organization is now a dictatorship. Exactly. And JWs are not allowed to read thoughts that differ. He nailed that. Additional notes on Feruli's testimony talks about the disfellowshipping arrangement, losing one's entire network, and 38 reasons for the expulsion, 37 judicial committees, and the governing body sets the rules, and he explains how it happens. And the difference between leaving voluntarily versus being expelled, there's no difference in practice. Those who leave on their own are part of the Antichrist. And he talks more about how people leave and the experience of leaving. And Massimo Intervini, it's not impartial, extremely, with Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witness lawyer talks about the faith, believes in the entire Bible, but with guidance from the governing body. 90% based on the Bible. That's what I say. There's 10% poison in what they teach. He discusses talks about baptism, marriage, and more. And then he asks about the letter, discussing whether it could be the Feruli misinterprets the Bible in the Watchtower. Gaslighting. Jehovah's Witnesses differ from all other societies. No one else follows the Bible to such an extent. Asks if Feruli personally knows members of the governing body. He doesn't, but has read their background stories in the Watchtower. Talks about the governing body, elders, and more. There are 11 expulsion grounds mentioned in the Bible. talks about suicide rates and mental health, says Jehovah's Witnesses are the best parents you can find. They spend a lot of time with their children. Talks about the relationship with children and parents' responsibility. Parents should instruct their children. Talks about violations of children's rights. Are there obstacles to leaving? No, but then they know they will be expelled. Yeah. You can leave, like there's no bars on the door. You just quit going, but eventually you get expelled. He talks about how it happens, and he talks about privileges and restrictions. He says that the expelled may enter the kingdom hall, but not participate in the ceremony. He talks about Jehovah's Witnesses in Norway having good finances, but they are affected by missing state support. 16%. He talks about good advice for parents on how they can help their children, not rules. Talks about the upbringing of children. Parents instruct their children to stop associating with another child who has stopped being an unbaptized preacher. Those who have been unbaptized preachers are considered worldly if they are no longer unbaptized preachers. That's true. I never thought of it that way. After Feri and Hildy testified, Hildy prepares to testify. That looks like probably her right there. Okay, so Hildy is a leader of the Help. You see the word help in there? Help Kilden. Help Kilden. It means help source. I don't know if I said that right, but it's an interesting word. The J is just silent, I guess. And then you see the help Kilden. So this is an organization targeting people with negative experiences from religions. Interesting. So quite a few of those seeking help are from Jehovah's Witnesses, JWs. She talks about its background, being married to someone raised as a JW, and experiences of people seeking help from this organization. People who don't dare to break out, people who have broken out and are completely alone, sometimes with psychological violations, and major problems, losing one's network, and having a doomsday fears. Most want to help to live a life without social control, and talks about how they offer help so people can move on. Sounds like kind of what we're doing up here. All over the world, this is happening, and because there's so many coming out, they need help. So this is great that this is going on. She talks about the consequences of breaking out, losing contact. Many of them contact and say they don't dare to leave the congregation. And she talks about the vulnerable youth, the mental leadership, suicidal thoughts, and more. She talks about experiences of children and youth growing up as a JW. It's not just about what you do, but also about what's going on up here. And all the time, a JW's mind is always thinking upon what the Watchtower has programmed into it. And it's terrible. It takes a long time to get that stuff out and to get level. So 1/3 of the people seeking help from Helps Kilden are exJW. Wow, 1/3. That's a large percentage. So the discussion about the mistletoe of state support. She talks about some common features among those seeking help. Talks about the number of suicides, suicidal thoughts, and psychological violations. And she talks about people who choose to come back. They usually don't contact the Helps Kilden if they come back. And Helps Kilden has some concerns when they have contacted the police because of minors. So now that's kind of that part of it. So now Teresa is up next. This is Teresa. So I'm just going to take a little break here. Here we go. You guys can just watch her as I go and fill my water glass. Okay, so we're going to move forward here. Teresa, she is a key witness. She smashed it. At one point, she stayed strong despite the emotion, but half the people with her broke down in tears, openly crying. She gave her testimony with a fire in her. Teresa talks about its background as a JW. She's a third-generation JW, baptized at 15, left at 30, and again at 35. Had a good childhood but lonely. Was the only JW in her school. Almost in her entire her entire family was JW. And she talks about the process of baptizing, talks about expulsion and the reasons for it. Had a secular boyfriend at 18, but broke up with him to avoid being disfellowshipped or excluded. And talks about her marriage and her husband who was unfaithful with her best friend. Yeah, it sounds familiar. Talks about the judgment committee. He was not excluded, but she was later excluded for drinking. Talks about her experience of being excluded for sexual misconduct. Had depression, suicidal thoughts, and fear of doomsday, and she got reinstated. So many in the audience are crying and sniffling, and a few break down listening to her story. Talks about the process of coming back and how hard it was. And then she talks about when she started researching and experienced that everything was untrue. Yeah, I know what that feels like. Manipulation from the governing body, lived a double life for 2 years until she was excluded again, and she has no contact with her family. Very little contact with her daughter, ex-husband, and mom. She can help them, but they don't help her. Talks about what she thinks about baptism, that it affects life more than getting married. Yeah. And she was diagnosed with bipolar and later with PTSD after being expelled. The next up is Jan Frode Nilsson. He testifies next here. Starting to spell a little bit different story than the JW lawyers are presenting when you really talk to the people and the victims. Okay, so now we're going to continue on. There's Jan Nilsson right there. And there's the courtroom. Jan's testifying now. Jan talks about his background, ordinary JW upbringing, talks about new understandings about unity and how he was baptized at 17. And he talks about the process, the JW was his identity, his networks, and then he gets into his expulsion, his disfellowshipping. Before he fell away, he didn't think much about expulsion as a young man. One of his best friends, a 16 to 18-year-old, was expelled when he lost faith. He was active until around 2014. He lost faith gradually. He tried to stay within the faith for the sake of the family. And he was expelled from the family in 2017, but was officially expelled as a JW later. He needed massive help from the public to move on with his life after being expelled. 2.5 years of therapy, 1 month of hospitalization. He talks about the expulsion process. He has 3 children, got divorced in 2016. She was also a JW. He talks about his relationship with the family who said goodbye to him. He has no contact with them. He received 1 phone call from his father who told him about his grandmother's death. He got to see the family during the funeral, but very little afterward, except for family members who also break away. He talks about the purpose and the reasons why people are expelled. And he talks about the relationship with people trying to find their way out. And about paper members, PMO. You can't speak publicly. You can't join secular associations. He talks about rules on expulsion in the Elder's Manual. And he talks more about baptism. The JW lawyer talks about when he was baptized, married, divorced, resigned when he lost faith, the JW lawyer. The lawyer doesn't want to hear about Jan's psychological abuses that he experienced after being expelled. He asks how many Jan knows who were expelled in adolescence, and Frode talks about those he knows. Talks about the others that Jan knows who have resigned. And he talks about the brainwashing, and talks about his father, and about the interview with his father, and about the activism. And then he talks about what he has studied. The more he studied, the more he realized the mistakes in the faith. The faith collapsed in his mind, probably. That's where it does. And there were many factors and experiences within congregations that contributed to him losing faith. And he talks about his new life, gradually became mentally better, is happy with his new life, has created a new social network, and he participates in politics. And he talks more about the decision to leave. End of article on Jan testifying. So next we're going to move on to Numei. She's next. And I'm just going to get a drink of water here. Okay, so this is Numei. Numei talks about her background growing up as a JW. She has several family members who have been expelled. She grew up in Sweden as a JW, had a safe upbringing, was not allowed to have friends who were not JW, and that was told the world she knew. That was the world she knew. She knew many who were expelled. She was afraid that the expelled would die. When expelled, she was not allowed to eat with family and go on trips, etc. And she talks about, you see, there's where the JWs are wrong. They're saying, oh, yeah, you can have all kinds of fellowship, just not spiritually. You can't get into spiritual fellowship. Well, here they can't even go on trips together. And that's the way it is. When you're expelled, you're out in the dark. No one talks to you. Talks about what it means to be bad examples. Was baptized at 13, never thought she could be excluded. She had a strong believed that if she wasn't baptized, she would die at Armageddon. You see, this is the line that all parents feed their kids. That's what the organization teaches. She wanted to live and see paradise. So, of course, she's going to get baptized as a young person, right? They show them all those paradise pictures. It's just a bunch of brainwashing. She moved to northern Norway, to strengthen small congregations. She was 18 when she was expelled because of sex, because she fell in love. Other members of the congregation told the elders that they were together. Talks about an elders meeting where she was warned that she would be expelled if she continued. And she was 17 then. She was completely alone with 3 elders during the meeting. It sounds familiar. Since she didn't feel guilty about what she had done, she thought she was now under Satan's control. She continued with her boyfriend and opposing privileges. She panicked and was anxious. She didn't want to be expelled. She didn't want to lose her mother. She talks about when and how she was expelled in front of her mom and dad. And she cried as if she were at her own funeral. And she felt completely alone. Her boyfriend left her as he couldn't handle the pressure. And she was completely alone. She lost faith and never came back 10 years ago. Talks about what it was like. She had a hard time figuring out life. She had to go through a lot. She has been diagnosed with a complex PTSD. She has been told that she can come back to the congregation so that she can be a family again. Yeah, they always say that. They never said that to me. No one has ever come back and talked to me. She has had some contact when she has been ill or to get in touch with her grandchildren, her children. Expelled individuals are perceived as a virus, absolutely. And she talks about a violent boyfriend who grew up as a JW but was never baptized. And she talks about how she lost faith. It was a long and tough process. She has 2 children, 1 and 6 years old, and she started her life anew. Her parents have said that they want contact with the grandchildren, but not her. I'd have a hard time with that, holding my tongue. She talks about unconditional love, and she talks more about the process of being expelled. End of day 5. Well, that's the end of day 5. That's some pretty intense testimonies from the exJWs. So it's good that this stuff is coming out, and I can't wait until this starts coming out in Canada, and something like this happens where a lot of the Canadians, there's people all around the world that are dealing with the very same stuff. These are really good testimonies to show the court really what it's like to be an exJW and how the shunning process works. So thanks again, folks, for sticking with us. It's been a long day, and we look forward to day 6 to hear some more of the exJW testimonies. And until next time, keep living your life with love, and have a great weekend. Bye for now. Thanks again for watching. We appreciate your comments, your dislikes, and your likes. If you would like to support the channel, just press join and buy us a coffee once a month. Until next time, keep dancing, smiling, laughing, and most of all, keep loving those around you. And have a great day.
Produced by Fixing My Faith.